So last week we had breakfast together, and those of us that were gathered together, we talked a little bit about what we've been looking at with the giftings, the church, Romans 12 that we've been looking at. And the question I asked that we talked about most of the time was, as a parent, or some people who, the kids were there too, so I was asking the little one, they could speak too, they may be a parent someday. The question was, how do you let your child, how do you let them use their giftings? God's given everybody gifts, skills. Might be that they want to try this athletic thing out, they want to try this instrument. How do you let your child do that? And there were answers like, well, you give them opportunity. You want to give them opportunity to try. I could tell you a lot of stories about that. Becky and I really tried to give opportunity. So many stories, and I don't have time to tell them, but some of them are kind of fun to tell. Times where, they can test, are they really interested in this thing? Kid says he wants to play an instrument. It's a really expensive one. It's like, how are we going to do? Really? You want to make sure, right? The tools they need, you want to give them the tools they need. It's what people shared. I ask questions, I just listen. You give them encouragement, provide lessons, provide recital opportunities if it's a musical interest. It's really interesting because God's vision and plan for the church, Paul presents it to the Romans. He writes this deeply theological book, and we're not going to just look at Romans today. We're going to do an overview that I kind of put in a graph form or picture form, because it's easier for me to grasp things when I put them in a picture. So we're just going to look at them really quick. But Paul understands God's giftings. It says that we're all given gifts. It's one body with many gifts, and the gifts are functions. They're not offices. They're functions. They're things you do. And not all the members of the body have the same function, but we're all members one of another. And the church is supposed to let the gifts be used. Let us use them. Well, I want to ask the people that you have a real burden for, that just really don't know the Lord. You'd love to see them come to the Lord. You'd love to bring them to church. Are you comfortable bringing them knowing they're going to not be perfect? God's given them a gift, and it's kind of like, a garden full of weeds, but you can see the potential. But wow, if they came, are people going to love them? Do you know the question I'm asking? And so you want to think carefully about, how this is going to work. Paul gives incredible answers in Romans and 1 Corinthians 13. Somehow, I just wish we could see it, because what he's presenting, in my estimation, there's a vision and a plan that God has. And what he tells us is how gardens flourish with imperfect gardeners. And nobody in this room is a perfect gardener. Do you know how gardeners learn? Well, they might read and they might try to understand, but you don't really learn until you work with the soil and pull the weeds and get in there and do it, do you? I mean, who has tried on their first attempt of having a wonderful garden? Many people give up because first one didn't go so good. Maybe the first one did, second one didn't. It's something that you do. You got to learn how to get your hands in the soil. And God's vision was a garden, and they flourish those gardens flourish with imperfect gardeners. So the question that we have to ask ourselves, our fellowship here at other churches, I'm not responsible for them, and I'm not speaking to them. Just about our churches here, what our responses are our hearts impassioned to understand that we are all imperfect gardeners. So whoever walks in that door, with whatever imperfection they have, how is it that we take imperfect gardeners and see the garden flourish with the imperfect? The first thing you got to do is you got to recognize there's no perfect gardener. So you got to be accepting of the fact that's just who we are. We're all coming out of darkness with all kinds of stuff. We have a lot to learn. And so let's look real quick, at the vision that God has. God and his agape love. Now, this comes right out of Romans 12. We're not going to look verse by verse, line by line. Many times I get hung up on Greek words. I'm going to try not to do that. We're going to look at it quick. So try to pay attention to the picture here just for a second. But God and his agape love, he gives this to the body, his church. And the gifts, they're seen in these blue arrows, the gifts that are supposed to be emerging. And this comes out of 1 Corinthians chapter 12 also. Administration. In Romans, leading. Apostles. Prophecy. Prophet. Teaching. Discernment of spirits. Giving. Healing. Evangelist. Miracles. Word of knowledge. Exhortation. Shepherding. Words of wisdom. Mercy giving. Service. I think I already said miracles. But these things are supposed to be gifts that they're underlined in green because that's us. So the gifts are going to have a very personal character that reflects us, right? And so these gifts, they're supposed to be flowing out of the love of God. And these gifts are given by God. And what he says is, in this passage in Romans 12, he says, be joined with or cling fast to love. That's in verse 9 where it says, let love be genuine. Interesting he says it that way, right? Let love be genuine. Like you're supposed to let the gifts flow. You're supposed to let the gifts happen. You're supposed to let love flow. You're supposed to let the giftings, let love. And so I put in blue those things that reflect that. So you're supposed to be genuine. It says without hypocrisy. Well, you know what hypocrisy is, right? You're just being fake. So it's supposed to be genuine love. We're going to come back to hypocrisy in a second. Again, none of us are perfect, right? So we might have the love of Christ in us, but we might have a bad day or a bad moment. Well, we're going to make sure I come back to that. Will you make sure I come back to that, CJ? Please give me a hard time. So it starts with ourselves. So we have to continually examine ourselves and say, okay, so what was today? What was yesterday? Not to beat ourselves down, but we want love to be real. Because as soon as we're fake, is that the environment we're going to want, that special one that we want to come into the fellowship? No, there's people out there that are in darkness. That's one of their biggest problems. People are fake. They want to see it real. So you want it to be real? You want to always reflecting on that? And this love is seen in, all this is in Romans 12. You can look at it. Verses 9 and on. Brotherly love. I think of the military guys that come back from war. And they've been through rough times. And I'm sure there's moments out there where they're yelling at each other. But when they get back, they're there for each other so many times. So whether things are good or bad, it's that kind of brotherly love. That because people have come in, whether they're perfect or not, even with their problems, you're going to love them because it's brotherly love that's there. Blessing when persecuted. Now you might think being a chameleon's bad. In this case, no. a chameleon sense of encouragement. What I mean by that, and it says it in Romans 12, when people are weeping, you have the kind of empathy that you're weeping with them. So situationally appropriate. If they're rejoicing, you might be having a rough day, but because God's love is in you, you are high-fiving their good times. Because you have that encouragement, that chameleon kind of encouragement. Patient when in tribulation. Oh, let me tell you something. I can say a whole lot about that. Past 7 months, I get up in the morning. I'm going to tell you this. It was every day. Am I planning to die? Or am I looking forward to living? When you're battling things like that, like cancer, I'm sorry, but you're thinking about those things. You spend time with the Lord, and then some difficult thing happens. Somebody calls, and you're like, you're tempted. You would think it'd be a big temptation to say, wow, I'm in this tribulation, and I got to be patient with you. I'm going to tell you what. I found a place of patience like I've never found in my life because I was putting my faith and trust in God, and God was real, and those things would happen. And for the most part, I did fairly well with it because I was trusting the Lord. I was like, it's a rough moment now. They're having a rough moment. They're not so kind, but you know what? It's all good because God's with me. My opportunity to see His love be great with them. Like, not all the time, but I sure grew in that. Contributing to the needs of the saints. So much I could say here. Do you know what that is? Do you know what a saint is? Some people would say, well, they're the good people. They're the good people that are serving, that are doing all these wonderful things. Jesus said, there's no one good. No, not one. You know what? There are days that I don't look like much of a saint. And when Paul addressed the saints, and then you look at the letters, oh, they had all kind of problems. The saints were people who were serving in full-time ministry, but they were the ones who just came in the door with all kinds of garbage going on in their lives. They were all saints. They were all saints. And having a heart that would be a giving heart, a contributing heart, you know, where you actually tithe so the church can give and contribute, whether it's full-time positions or volunteers coming to assist with mission, or people who are coming in and just plain needy. And I could say a whole lot more, but we're going to move on. About the needy, that is. Hospitality. You know, who is it? What kind of person is it? That somebody knocks on their door, it's pouring rain. They don't have much of a porch. You got horizontal winds going on. And crack the door, can I help you? And you don't invite them in. No, it's God's vision of these things is a thing of always having the door open, inviting them in, getting them out of the cold. Doesn't matter what the function is, that's how you're supposed to be. That's what it is to let love flow. Harmony with one another. Humble. Honorable. The question isn't what is owed, what somebody deserves. No, it's what is honorable in my response to whatever walks in the door. But what's the honorable thing to do? What is the honorable response? And a total surrender, this is real important. Total surrender of vengeance. Do you know how hard that is, guys? We live in a society here in America that this is hard for us because we believe we have rights. And we believe this right, you violate this right, you deserve that wrong. We really need to hear something here. Total surrender of this idea of evil for evil or somebody getting what they deserve. Total surrender to God. We're supposed to be letting love flow in our giftings as we gather people in. Now I'm going to ask, like we did 2 weeks ago, wouldn't it be nice? And I sang the Beach Boys song, right? Not going to do that again. Wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it be lovely? Guys, this is more than wouldn't it be nice? This is what transforms. And this is the kind of joyful place God wants his people to serve, seeing the ugliness of what the world does get turned around in somebody's life, where you're allowed to come in with your problems. It's okay. But your heart is all about, but I want it to be real. I don't want it to be fake. And so what does that mean? Here's what it means. It means when I got a young person that says, Pastor Rich, you just taught about this, but I'm seeing that. That I don't say, look, you little snot, you're not being respectful. You can just sit down and shut up. No, where I say, you know what? You kind of have a point. You're going to have to give me a second. I'm going to have to pray about that one. We're supposed to be the kind of humble and the kind of honorable that listens. Not for the point of humiliating us, but we don't want it to be fake. And we're already imperfect. We know that. So if they point out the imperfection, guys, one of my terrible fears is to walk out or to be on camera and my zipper's down, right? I don't know if you're a guy, but you got to know, right? If you're a woman, it should be, if you have a skirt on, coming out of the bathroom, making sure your skirt is not tucked into your panties. You don't want to do that. And it's really awkward when you see somebody and you don't know them and you want to help them out. Do you tell them or don't you? If it's me, please tell me. I don't want to be walking around with my zipper down. Guys, why can't we get this? If you want your love to be real and you got something going on that you really think later, well, that was pretty bad. Don't you want to hear it? That we're supposed to be that kind of people so that when people come in who have all kind of problems, guess what? They see that and they say, wow, you're allowed to be imperfect. People still love you. What's going on here? This is different than what I'm used to. And you know what? That's how it's going to be with you. And if it isn't, because all of us are imperfect, come tell us. Because that's our goal. Our goal is that it be real. So if you have a rough moment in here among us, please come tell us. Because our goal is supposed to be that love flows genuine. And the other side of that is we're supposed to, look at verse 9 again, we're supposed to abhor what's evil, hating what is evil. Okay, I hope you hear this. Because there are some of us like me. If I'm sitting in a group and somebody offers words of correction, I'm going to be the one who, even if I've had great weeks and they aren't really talking to me, they're talking to the group because there's some other problems, I'm going to be the one that says, wow, how did I screw up so bad? I'm going to do that every time. This isn't about you. It's about what darkness has done to you. And so whatever is bad that has been setting you up for failure, that's what you're supposed to hate. So when there's love that's mingled with cursing, you don't want that, right? Where your tendency, you're driving down the road. And I hope the kids are listening now, because you can have an impact on your parents. My kids did. Wow, one time at home, I said somebody was a jerk, and oh man, my child went to school and told the teacher it was her boyfriend. It was like, oh, you're driving down the road and you have something ill to say about somebody that just cut you off. Just understand, little ears are hearing. And I wanted my kids. It was okay. At least I hope they understood that. I was glad that they told me ahead of time instead of taking it to school. And they weren't disciplined for that. I was the one who messed up. But when we have bad things to say about people, Cursing is not necessarily speaking bad words, but it's that too. It's speaking bad of someone, not words of blessing. And particularly those who really made life tough for us. Not empathetic. We're supposed to hate those things about us where all of a sudden we're not very empathetic. We're impatient when we're in tribulation. So those moments over the past 7 months where I wasn't impatient, and I just, man, God would make me aware of it. It was like, oh, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be that. No generosity. No discipline of giving. No giving to those who are serving, those in need. Do you know how hard it is sometimes? I don't care how good you are and how much God has worked in your life. It is so hard when you have people and they come and they call on you in the worst possible moments of tribulation. I need $80. I need $150. I'm like, I don't have any money in the bank account right now. I'm really struggling with this dark stuff in my... You know what? You got to have God's love flowing through you, that you want to see those moments where you don't have that pleasant response, where you're inhospitable. Somebody's coming to the door and you're thinking, not today. Particularly because it's a Spectrum guy selling something, or it can be blowing. No, I don't want any. You know what? Maybe I'm pushing the envelope a little too much on that one. But we're supposed to be hospitable people, and particularly in the functioning of the gifts, so we can have people come in, and it's like, you're having a bad moment. Who let them in the door? Why are they here? They're a hot mess. That's what the church is supposed to be, guys. They're supposed to be, so that we can see them say, this is a wonderful thing. And they're here for a while. And you constantly see this stuff, and you're thinking, they're never going to change. I'm going to come back to that one. Always the off-key voice. I don't want to say much there. But we're supposed to be in a place of harmony. There are people that have different notes to put forward. Please hear this and understand it. There are people who I might be teaching a lesson, and I might have somebody come up and say, Pastor Rich, I get what you're trying to say, but all due respect, and they have something to tell me that's a different note of the same thing. The question is it a harmonious note? Or is it just being critical? I think that it's a great thing. We believe here in putting everything on the table and considering and examining it. But the off-key voice is supposed to give way to the harmonizing voice. And I might be in the treble clef, and somebody might have the richness of the bass to offer. I'm supposed to welcome that. We're supposed to be that way with everybody. Do you know what? It enriches. Somebody came up to me a few weeks ago, offered something, and guess what? Inside, I had this thing going on. Do I really want to hear what's being said? Yes, I wanted to hear it. I walked away from there encouraged. It was very much a harmonious note, but it was a different clef. It was a different note. It was a good thing. We're supposed to be a body that's together like that. This repayment thinking of evil for evil. Not supposed to. No, we're supposed to hate the bad stuff. Are you getting this? We're supposed to hate the bad stuff. Even if we see measures of it in us, we're not supposed to hate ourselves. We're supposed to hate the bad stuff, and we're supposed to be joined with or cling fast to this thing of letting love flow, letting it transform us, and let the giftings flow. But this is supposed to be in this place of relationship with one another and with people on the outside, so that that person you want to bring, and they say, yeah, you know what? I've been in places like that before, and you think, okay, they don't understand we're different. They're not going to believe me. So I need to keep praying about it because I want them to come.